Blackmagic Design has got so many video switcher options available, it can be completely overwhelming to a non-expert about what the right solution is. When it comes to live streaming for church, I'm a big proponent of hardware video switchers. So if your church has yet to invest in that direction and you're trying to find the right solution for your setup, make sure you stay tuned for the rest of this video because that's exactly what we're talking about today. Well, hey, thanks for checking this video out. I'm Spencer from churchvideoschool.com, where we help churches learn both the technical skills and the ministry strategy necessary to win when it comes to online church. In this video, we're going to be looking at two very popular switcher models for churches, the ATEM Mini Pro and the ATEM TV Studio HD. I've helped dozens and dozens of churches get set up for live streaming in the past year, and I can tell you that there are good reasons for both switchers. But what confuses a lot of people is how to know which one is better for what kind of setup. So in this video, we're going to compare the features of both switchers to get a better idea of when to use one, when to use the other, or when to get something totally different. Now, before we get too far into the video today, I want to let you know that all the gear we're talking about today, as well as gear for video production and live streaming specifically for churches, is linked in the church video gear guide in the description below, so make sure you check that out. All right, so the ATEM Mini Pro came out about a year ago or so, and it was amazing timing for Blackmagic with the COVID-19 pandemic. The ATEM Mini Pro is an all HDMI switcher. It's got 4 HDMI inputs, 1 HDMI output, 1 USB-C connection, and 1 Ethernet connection. The ATEM Mini Pro retails for $595. The ATEM Mini Pro can be completely operated by the buttons, though it does need to connect to a computer to get set up for live streaming. The ATEM TV Studio HD is a little bit more of a broadcast style switcher, though it can technically be controlled from all the buttons on the front. It's a 2/3 size rack mount that can go either in a rack or just straight on the table. For inputs, it's got 4 HDMI inputs and 4 SDI inputs. It has an Ethernet port and a USB 2.0 port to get it connected and set up and controlled from a controlling computer. It's got an HDMI out for multi-view, an SDI out for multi-view, 4 SDI program outs, 1 main SDI program out, and 1 aux SDI out. The ATEM TV Studio HD retails for $995. All right, so let's compare a few different categories to stack up how the ATEM Mini Pro and the TV Studio HD compare to each other. The first thing we're going to look at is inputs. So for number of inputs, the ATEM Mini Pro has 4 HDMIs, but the ATEM TV Studio HD has 8, 4 HDMI and 4 SDI. So for pure scalability, the ATEM TV Studio HD has a lot more room to grow than the ATEM Mini Pro. However, there's one big difference between these switchers, which is that the ATEM Mini Pro comes with a built-in video scaler. That means as long as it's an HD or lower signal, it can come in at almost any frame rate and be converted to whatever the standard you've set is. So that means in a practical sense that when you're connecting your MacBook Pro that's running at 60 Hertz and is very difficult to change, it'll still work even if your cameras are coming in at 24 or 29.97 Hertz. Whereas on the TV Studio HD, every single input, no matter what kind of input it is, has to be the exact same frame rate and resolution. This can make connecting computers very difficult and require additional equipment or software. For audio connections, the differences are somewhat minor. The ATEM Mini Pro only uses a 3.5mm headphone jack, which isn't super great, but it will get your signal there even in stereo. And the ATEM TV Studio HD has got 2 XLR inputs which lock, are easier to run, and again, just simpler to set up. All right, now let's talk about operation. Both of these switchers connect to computers via Ethernet and are controlled with ATEM Control software. This is very simple to use. It mimics a desktop video switcher, but don't have to spend $3,000 to have one. And it makes operation very, very simple. However, a difference between the two is that the ATEM Mini Pro doesn't actually need the software in order to run. Technically, neither of them need the control software in order to stream, but the TV Studio HD is very difficult to run on the physical buttons just because of where they are and how they operate. The ATEM Mini Pro is designed to be used as an actual device where you use the buttons, so it's actually really simple to use without the software. There is one more big difference with the ATEM Mini Pro, which is that it's got a USB-C port. That means that you can record directly to a hard drive over USB-C without having to use any additional computers or equipment. You can just plug it straight into the switcher, literally hit the record button on the switcher itself, and it'll record everything going out your program feed. This is a huge benefit for those of you who want a master copy or who may be doing other produced work for editing later to just save time. The other enormous advantage the ATEM Mini Pro has in operation is that it can stream by itself. It's got a hardware encoder built in, so once you use the ATEM software to set up your streaming destination, you can unplug from that computer and plug directly into a router or a switched Ethernet port, and you can literally stream with just the press of a button to that destination, no computers required. This is an amazing asset of the ATEM Mini Pro and probably my favorite feature of it because it eliminates another computer from your workflow if you're limited on space or on funds. All right, now let's talk camera control because that's an exciting feature for many of us. We're not talking about PTZ control where you can control your focus and all of your actual camera physical movements. We're talking more about color control, ISO, color balance, white balance, all those kinds of adjustments to make sure all your angles line up and look exactly the same and as good as possible. Both of these switchers feature camera control through the ATEM software, and if you're using Blackmagic cameras, you can use this amazing feature without buying a shading station or any other expensive equipment, with one big catch. For the ATEM TV Studio HD, you've got to be able to run an SDI feed back to one of their studio cameras or their Ursa or Ursa Mini cameras that can accept a USB signal in order to use this kind of feature. There is a converter called the up-down cross that allows for you to use fewer cables for this, but the bottom line is those are the only compatible cameras with the ATEM TV Studio HD. Now, the ATEM Mini Pro is only compatible with 2 cameras that Blackmagic produces for camera control, but those 2 cameras are the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K and Pocket Cinema 6K, easily the most popular cameras for live streaming that Blackmagic makes. So while you have a lot more options in Pro Control in the ATEM TV Studio HD, it doesn't really matter. If you're running the Pocket Cinema lineup, the ATEM Mini Pro is the only switcher you can buy that'll talk directly to those cameras without an interface in between. Alright, so far the ATEM Mini Pro definitely has a leg up on the TV Studio HD, but not so fast. Now we need to talk about the most important difference between these two, which is outputs. So we've already covered this a little bit, but just a reminder, your ATEM Mini Pro has one HDMI output, one Ethernet output, and one USB-C output. What that means is that if you're using a very basic live streaming setup where you've got cameras coming in, you've got your HDMI out for your multi-view, which is pretty much the only thing it's good for, and then you've got your Ethernet connection going directly into a computer or Ethernet switch to stream to your destinations, it's really, really effective. It does a fantastic job. But, and this is a huge asterisk, if you want to send video feeds anywhere else in your building and stream at the same time, you cannot do it with this switcher. Now, before you leave a comment and tell me that I haven't done my research, I have, and here's the limitations. The HDMI out on the back can be anything. It can be a program feed, a single channel feed, a clean feed, or your multi-view. But if you take it away and use it for an HDMI output to, say, a Resi device or back into ProPresenter 7 or into a distributor to go throughout your building, guess what? You no longer have a multi-view at all. So you're switching blind. You can't see what your cameras are seeing. And to me, there's no way you can effectively live stream without a multi-view. So to me, that option is completely off the table. So what that leaves you with is the Ethernet port and the webcam option on USB. You technically can USB tether into a computer and treat your ATEM Mini Pro as a webcam and use a webcam streaming service and software. However, this is a high latency, low quality way to do this, so I don't recommend it. You're going to lose a lot of quality at a high cost. So what that means is you've got your Ethernet port only as your main program out. Now, if you want to stream through ProPresenter 7, through a Resi hardware encoder or any other hardware encoder, you can take your Ethernet cable, plug it into what's called the ATEM streaming bridge, and it will convert that signal into SDI and HDMI outputs. With that, you can plug one of those cables into your hardware encoder and send it online and use another cable and run a feed all throughout your building. and that's great. So that's technically a solution. It's a $250 purchase. So to me, you're not getting all that you paid for with the ATEM Mini Pro, which is a super affordable switcher that doesn't require a second computer. You now have to get a streaming bridge for $250, and you have to get a separate hardware encoder, or at least a Decklink 3G recorder device to get the feed into your computer, which again is another $100 to $500, and it just ends up stacking up to where you're not saving any money by buying the ATEM Mini Pro. With the ATEM TV Studio HD, I think a lot of people undervalue how much output potential that this switcher has. Obviously, you've got your main SDI program feed, which you do have to feed into a computer or into a hardware encoder, which is again $100 to $500. But what you also have is an aux out, which can be anything you want. Again, a single feed, a clean feed, a program feed copy that you can use for some other purpose, and you also have 4 program outputs on that SDI row in the back. These were designed for TalkBack and Tally to go back to these cameras, but if you use them and just plug them into a TV or plug them into your network, you're going to have just a copy of your program feed show up anywhere you plug these in. So that gives you so much more potential for networking lobby TVs, cry room TVs, without having to daisy chain one signal across the entire building. I think this is a huge asset of the switcher, and one that's really underrated by those of us comparing these two options. If you're looking at how many converters you might be saving for SDI runs to cameras that are far away, or if you're running into a control room, not having to convert everything to HDMI may save you a couple $100 in converters, and that may be the difference if you're looking purely at cost. All right, so we really nerded out there, and I hope that you guys were able to follow along. But in summary, this is what I would say. If you're looking at a simple live stream setup and you don't need to feed video into other parts of your building, then the ATEM Mini Pro is a fantastic option, and it's almost unbeatable for what it's designed to do, which is a simple live stream with one destination online. If you're looking at doing more of an infrastructure setup, where you've got cabling running throughout your building and you've got stuff going online and you want to use Resi or ProPresenter 7 or some other kind of streaming service, the ATEM TV Studio HD or other switcher models like the 4K models are going to allow you to do more with that same setup without buying additional gear. Now, you may have noticed I haven't mentioned the ATEM Mini Extreme. This definitely bridges the gap between these two switchers. The ATEM Mini Extreme has literally doubled all the inputs and outputs of the ATEM Mini Pro, which solves many of the huge issues I have with the ATEM Mini Pro. It also has features that the ATEM TV Studio HD doesn't, like hardware scaling, which is really, really valuable. Now, I already did a full review of the ATEM Mini Extreme, which you can see up here if you haven't caught it already. I think it's an amazing switcher, and after I get my hands on one pretty soon, it may become my go-to switcher recommendation for churches. However, at the end of the day, there is no one-size-fits-all. What matters most is knowing exactly what you need and what you will need in the next 12 to 24 months before you make your purchase. Now, if you'd like some help figuring out not only what the best tech solutions are for your situation, but also with coaching and training for you and your entire volunteer team to run an effective live stream each and every Sunday, make sure you click apply in the link below to reach out to me, and I would love to get on the phone with you and talk through the best solutions for you and your church. So no matter what size your church is or what size your budget is, there are ways for us to partner with you and reach more people for the kingdom using video. All right, guys, I hope this has been helpful for you. Again, leave a comment, like, and subscribe if this has been valuable to you, and I'll see you next time.